Ambassador Vinod Jacobji, distinguished members of the Indian community, let me say what a great pleasure it is to be with all of you this evening. I've been here since yesterday and I'm actually wrapping up my visit after this, but obviously I wouldn't have gone home without meeting all of you. It is my second visit to Bahrain, but in a sense I would say really it's my first proper visit. It's my first proper, I was here in November 2020 to convey condolences when the late Prime Minister Prince Khalifa passed away. I missed Prime Minister's visit in August 2019. I had just become Minister at that time. So as I said, this is really the first time I've got to spend some significant amount of time in Manama to meet all of you in these numbers and to get to see and understand and appreciate a lot of what is going on here. Now, I must tell you that in a way, there is really nothing like a visit to take stock of what is happening in a relationship, because when you come on a visit, there is a preparation, you focus on it. When you're here, you meet a lot of people, you meet them physically, there's a lot of open discussion about the relationship. And at the end of my 2 days, I must admit that I am actually very impressed both by the state of the relationship as well as the appreciation that I've heard for the Indian community from the Bahraini leadership. So please don't think that I'm saying this as the departing formality of a visiting foreign minister. I really mean it as an impression that I have gathered over the last 2 days. So what have I been doing? Maybe that's a good place to start this meeting interaction. One, of course, my primary purpose of being here was to co-chair the Joint Commission with my counterpart, Foreign Minister Al-Zayani. We had some meetings yesterday. We had a very detailed meeting today. I also met the Trade Minister, Minister Fakhro. I had an opportunity to call on Deputy Prime Minister Sheikh Khalid. So in terms of official meetings, really it was very intensive, very open, very wide-ranging. But I did think, this place really was something, wherever you go, you want to make the fullest use, and in this case I timed my visit with the Manama dialogue. There had been a long-standing invitation from the government of Bahrain. So yesterday, along with 2 other colleagues, including my host, I delivered the I attended the closing session of the dialogue. Today, I also took time out and I visited the causeway. I had a reason for doing so, I must tell you. I've heard a lot about the causeway, and one of the things we tried to do today as ministers of the Modi government, we'll go around the world looking at interesting experiences, looking at projects, looking at initiatives of other countries, and seeing is there something out there, which is worth understanding and from which there are takeaways for ourselves. And I must say, I was very impressed by the traffic and the volume of the traffic and the efficiency of the causeway. I, of course, like anybody Indian coming here, took blessings at Srinathji Temple yesterday morning. I met some of you on that occasion as well. As part of meeting others who had come for the Manama dialogue, I'd actually also met some other foreign ministers, and some people who are involved in maritime security issues involving the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. So that's really the background with which I come to meet you today. And I understand, as the Indian community living here, your focus would naturally be on our bilateral relations. You would like to know, okay, what is happening here, where is it going, what are the prospects, what does it mean to you? And I have some thoughts here which I would like to place before you. First and foremost, the fact that every relationship requires a continuous interaction in a way between the leaderships of the countries. That if countries have to understand each other, if they have to get along with each other, like people, if in your own lives, if you want to be friends with somebody, you are friends with somebody by spending time with them. Something similar also happens between countries, and definitely Foreign Minister Al-Zayani and I, wherever we meet, not just here or in India, it could be, we met last time in Riyadh, before that in New York. So we have, over a period of time, tried to develop a culture where ministers and leaders of Bahrain and India, because it's not just me, our trade ministers, for example, also met very recently in Delhi, that we try to see that, there's as much interaction and open and positive conversation between our leaderships. The second development which I want to flag to you is, of course, the economic facet of our ties. We have today a growing trade relationship. Our annual trade turnover is about $1.7 billion. And there's also been an uptick in investments both ways. Indian companies coming here, Bahrainis looking at India. But these are numbers which can always be bigger. And they become bigger not by themselves. People have to work at it. Many of you are from the business world. In the business world, you will always have issues and problems and, some obstacles somewhere. It's important that people who are in positions of responsibility in the government know those problems. And we will only know those problems when business talks to business and business talks to government. And part of the reason I'm here and part of the reason why we want to encourage economic cooperation is actually to get these, to get the chambers exchanging visits, to get individual business people to talk to others, to have the kind of delegation that we had recently for Bahrain for one of our CII events. So how do you identify issues? How do you resolve issues? And this is constant work in progress. There's never any end to it. No country has a perfect business environment. Everybody can do with some improvement. And part of the improvement is the honesty to know what are problems and then to have the commitment to resolve it. The third pertains to the interests of the community. Because when a community in sizable numbers, those of you sitting in the room, you represent today a community of 335,000 people. Now 335,000 people living in a country away from their motherland will have their own interests and will have their concerns. And those also need to be looked at. And those also, wherever, whatever, and in whichever manner government can do to support those interests. So it could be visa problems, it could be travel convenience, it could be, issues pertaining to the faith of the community, to the economic needs of the community, to educational institutions, that kind of support. So what can we do to support the community better? I think this is something which has been in many ways the hallmark of the Modi government. Whichever country we go to, we are focused on the welfare of the community, and that is also something here which we would like to do. And we would like to do it because particularly in this country, I see a degree of, I would say, receptivity and a local positivity, which I think is truly exceptional, and we would like to keep that strong, we would like to keep that well nurtured. Now, apart from this, any relationship, there will always be new areas. After all, we are changing, Bahrain is changing, the world is changing. So we also discussed, what are the new things which we can do. Now, new things can sometimes be really new, say, for example, is an area like space. It can be new because something different has come up in a country like India. We look at examples like a RuPay card or the use of UPI, cashless transactions. Or it can be a new policy. India today, for example, is open to Indian universities going out of India and establishing campuses. So how do we do new things, and again, part of the newness can even be new areas of business. There's a lot of interest, for example, particularly after COVID, in health. Health, not just in terms of health professionals coming, but health in terms of pharmaceutical manufacturing, health in terms of medical facilities. A lot of countries today do look to India as a partner to really improve their health system. So these are some of the examples that I'm sharing with you. But at the end of the day, well-being, however important, is contingent on security. Security, defense, safety, these are crucial issues for any country. And I must say here today that Bahrain is among our very trusted and very reliable defense and security partners. For many years, Bahrain hosts a platform called the CMF, Combined Maritime Force. It has a responsibility really of looking at this entire region, the sea space, which is very important because, if the seas are not safe, then trade is not safe, and the implications of that. And we have joined the Combined Maritime Force. We are taking part in some of its task forces. And how do we work with this body? How do we coordinate with that? How do we work with our Bahraini colleagues? I think this is also something which has been something very valuable. And finally, of course, Bahrain is part of the GCC. Anything we do in Bahrain has a larger significance. Often we may be locating ourselves here, but the impact of our presence in this country is not just here. It applies, it has a relevance to the entirety of the GCC. Again, we have always seen in Bahrain a very strong supporter, a country which has long been an advocate for India in the GCC, and it is something which we appreciate and value very much. Now, that's broadly been the state of the relations, but there is one issue which I would like to also place before you because it's very topical, and it is something which might come up in your own interactions with local people. So it's important that you know that. And that pertains to the conflict and violence that has been going on in the Middle East, West Asia, we call it, since last year. It's important you know it, as I said, because India's approach is an approach which is balanced, which is not one-sided, very, which looks at the issues in all their complexity, and which also has a fundamental commitment to justice and equity. So I do want to share a few key points here. As a country that itself has been impacted so deeply by terrorism, we are very strongly opposed to terrorism and hostage taking. They should never be excused or condoned. But at the same time, it is very important that any action which is taken by any government or any armed force must always take care of civilian casualties, how to minimize civilian casualties, must always be respectful of humanitarian law, should cater for relief and looking after people who are affected in any operation. And that is why in the midst of all of this, what we've been seeing for the last year, India has also been contributing to the UN UNRWA, UNRWA, which is the primary relief agency in respect of the Palestinians. And India has supplied relief material to Palestine, to the Palestinian Authority, through Egypt. We have also given medicines, medical relief to Lebanon because of the fighting and the casualties which have taken place there. And at the end of the day, we do believe that there must be a solution to the Palestinian issue, because if there is not one, that will always remain the cause of instability in this region. So we do support a two-state solution. Obviously, that is something the international community has to discuss and agree upon. But it's important all of you know this, because this is today an issue which is very emotionally charged. I think in this region, it is in the minds not only of people like me who discuss and work on diplomacy, but I think even in the minds of the average people. People do want to know, okay, what is your country's position on this matter, and that's why I thought it's important for all of you to know that. So if ever you have these conversations, or even in terms of talking to your friends or people at your workplace, it's important you know what is your country's position out here. So with that, let me say a few things about developments at home, because you may be abroad, but I think when you are abroad, and people like us who have also spent a lot of their lives abroad, in fact, when you live abroad, your mind is even more at home and interested in both the progress at home, concerned at what may be challenges at home, but always, one part of you is there focused on India. Now, I speak about what happens at home because, again, it's understandable that you will take pride at progress at home. In many ways, what happens in India opens up opportunities for you, all of you abroad. But it's also true that the world looks at you. Every country in the world, people abroad look at you. They look at you differently today because of all the progress that has been made in India. So you are stakeholders in India, you are contributors to what is happening in India, and therefore you have every right to know and understand and be connected to developments in India. So how do I put it to you very, very simply? I would say perhaps today, in many ways, the world looks at India and recognizes that while much of the world has either not recovered from the COVID, or if it has recovered, it is struggling with the after effects of COVID, the economic after effects of COVID. In India, certainly, today, the fact that our growth rates are back, that we are at that 7% growth level once again, I think it is something that the world definitely recognizes and respects. The second is actually the political stability. Because if you look at the world, I mean, every day all of you follow the news to some degree or the other. What we see across the world today is actually, disaffection, anti-incumbency, in many ways disruptions of various kinds. So it is very rare today in a democratic society to have a government back to back 3 times in power in our own country. It has happened only once before, and that was 60 years ago. So the fact today that you have a government which represents a high degree of political continuity, but most important, which has the ability to use the experiences gained over the last 10 years to actually accelerate progress and modernity and growth in India. That is something which definitely is a factor in the world's perception of India. Now, I don't have to tell you, I think most of you would be visiting India fairly frequently. You have seen the changes yourself. Again, it is not my contention that things are perfect. This is always work in progress. But there's no question that in the last decade, the country in many ways has taken some very big steps and very consequential steps in our journey towards Viksit Bharat. And if you look at it, not so much as individual steps, because you will see examples of it everywhere. Each one of you visiting whatever is your hometown or on the way, you will see the airports are different, the trains are different. In your own hometown, things are a little bit different. If you do business, that is a little bit different. You will see more schools and colleges, better lighting, maybe water supply is better. So you will judge it for yourself through your own experiences and by talking to your family and friends who live in India. But if I put it to you as an explanation, what has really changed in the last decade, I would say I could list 4 or 5 big initiatives. One, the fact that we have made it much easier to do business in India. This has definitely promoted that culture where there is stronger growth, better employment. We have made it easier, ease of living. We have improved ease of living for the common citizen. That for an average person, what interface they have with the government, what they need to do to get anything done, any kind of service done, what their daily life requirements are, those have become very much easier. Infrastructure has definitely transformed. I mean, if you look today at, as I said, there's no other country in the world which is building 7 to 8 airports a year. No other country in the world which is changing its railways at the rate at which we are, which is building highways at the speed at which we are, which is increasing education at the rate at which we are. Then I think a big factor in the change in India is the digital public infrastructure. The fact that so many services are today digitally available and they made the country more efficient. Frankly, they've reduced corruption in the country. In many ways, they have allowed government to reach out to many more citizens in a way, what we would do in lakhs, we are today doing in crores. What we were doing in crores or what we thought we could do in crores, we are doing in tens of crores. So the reach out of the government today, the houses we build, the rations you give, the health support which is extended, the kind of farmers' benefits which are given, almost any kind of public service today, citizen service today, which is extended by the government, that has actually in scale and in its efficiency and in its honesty, it has really improved tremendously. And of course, at the end of it all, there is a certain vision today which is motivating the country. The call towards Viksit Bharat is a motivational call that we need big targets, big dreams for which we should aspire. And what it has done in many ways, it has inculcated a new spirit in the country. It's a new spirit which you can see particularly in younger people. So if you read about, a successful Chandrayaan mission, or if you say, okay, during COVID, we were the best vaccine producers who invented our own vaccine. Or as I said, you see today a train like Vande Bharat, or on telecom, an India stack and a 5G technology. Do understand today, these are all signs of a country which is more confident, which is more capable, and which is aspiring to something much bigger. So that is the state of the country. But again, I come back to the world. because we are today sitting in Bahrain. Many of you came here, some of you have lived here for generations. But I ask you to reflect on that also for a moment. You know, we have historically, all of us, thought of the world in a way like a marketplace. Marketplace where everybody does business. It still remains one. But the world is also today a workplace. It is a workplace where people go out in search of work. We used to do it largely within our own country, within our own borders, within our own society. We were comfortable doing it. But that's no longer the state of the world. The opportunities today are across the world. And if you look today in this region, see the number of Indians, the increase in the number of the Indian community across the GCC. Look at the demand, even in Bahrain. Look at the demand for almost any profession. You know, the world needs more doctors, it needs more nurses, it needs more chartered accountants, it needs more lawyers. In fact, it pretty much needs everything in larger numbers. And when it needs so much more services, so much more talent, and that cannot remain in one country to serve the rest of the world. There is today, we are seeing the beginnings of a totally different kind of international economy, which is centered on mobility, where many more people will be traveling. Because if there's one thing I can predict, your community numbers will increase, you know, in leaps and bounds in the times to come. So how do we prepare for that? And preparing for that has to be a partnership between the community that already is based abroad and with the government at home. And that is a subject which we need to look at. So let me conclude then by saying this to you, that there is a lot that is happening at home, which is should be a matter of pride and satisfaction to you. Please stay connected. I know I'm preaching to the converted here. I know most of you do that. But please stay as connected as you can. The fact that we have today so many Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardees is one in a way, motivation for that to do that. I remind you that the next Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is coming up next month. It will be in Odisha. I hope to see at least some of you out there. But when you think of India, certainly take, be happy, be pleased, be part of the achievements which are there. Be part of the efforts needed to progress India as well, because your contribution, and contributions can come in different ways, people who have experienced something abroad, people who have resources abroad, people who can motivate other people abroad. They are all today valuable at this point of our growth. And do recognize today that we are a country about whom the world has many expectations. I certainly heard that from the Bahraini leadership, that for them, the fact that our naval ships are here helping to keep the sea safe, that our community members are here contributing to the economy of Bahrain, the fact that we are seen in very complex situation. There are not many countries which can say that I can talk to Iran and I can talk to Israel. I can talk to Palestine and I can talk to Israel. I can talk to Russia and I can go to Ukraine. There are not many countries today who have that ability. So it gives us really a very special value in the eyes of the world. And certainly we want to use that positioning to advance the interests of all of you out here. Once again, I'm really very appreciative of the fact you have all taken out time. I know it's, we all have busy lives, but for me it's a great pleasure before I leave, to be here and share some of my thoughts about what I've been doing, and also recognize the contribution that all of you are making to the relationship. And I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Now we open the floor for an interactive session. A couple of reminders before we go into the session. We request the community leaders to keep their questions concise so that we can engage with maximum queries as possible. Please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. Please introduce yourself with your name prior to asking the question. To ensure that all questions are effectively answered, we will collect 3 questions at a time. Additionally, we ask to make sure that the questions are not repeated. Without further ado, let's begin our interactive session, and I would now hand over to His Excellency Vinod K. Jacob, the Indian Ambassador, to moderate the session.
Who are wishing to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Good evening, Your Excellency Minister. My name is Muhammad Hussain Malim, representing Bharati Tamil Association and non-resident Indian Tamil Association. I would like to appreciate your excellent speech you made, and plus I would like to thank you from my heart for your intervention on this 30 plus fishermen who are arrested by Bahrain Coast Guard while they are entering from Bahrain. We thought it's going to be a very complicated issue and these poor people will suffer very long. But your intervention and direction and the efficiency of our ambassador to India to Bahrain and all the officials of embassy, this matter was solved in a matter of weeks, which is totally unexpected. And we thank you from our bottom of our heart for this initiation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very good of you to say so, but I want to make a larger point. You know, I spoke about the world as a global workplace. The fact is also more and more Indians leave the shores of India. They go as tourists, they go as students, they go to work. And we have seen, that they can get into situations where it is most important for the official system to do something about it. Because we have reached a stage we cannot leave our people in difficulty, anybody, in any country, to themselves. This is an obligation that we have to our citizen. And I would say, as someone who's been, who spent a lifetime in diplomacy, to me one of the big changes of the last decade has been this focus on the welfare of individual citizens. That it's not like we were not doing this before, but I think the kind of focus and the kind of push, and sometimes even the systems that, if any of you were to lose your passport somewhere or something unfortunate happens, today the mindset of the system has actually changed. Every embassy, every consulate, every ambassador knows that this is something that they have to do, and we use, because our relationships with the world is also that much stronger, we use those relationships for the benefit of ordinary people. But I appreciate very much that this particular incident is recognized by you, and I value the words that you have said.
Thank you. Here, Mr. Balu.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a wonderful presentation. And we sincerely appreciate everything that you are doing for the country. And my name is Balasubramaniam. I practice here as a chartered accountant over 25 years. What visibly is evident is that the embassy has become really digital. in the sense that in delivering, services and faster. That's one. But why I rose to stand here is, I am also Vice Chairman of the Bahrain India Society, and we have a long-standing request for a double taxation treaty between the country of Bahrain and India. Just for the information, that Bahrain is the only country in the MENA region which does not have a double taxation treaty, and since corporate tax is going to be a reality in Bahrain, it would definitely be benefit for the both businesses, both Bahrain and India. And when you ask for a tax residency certificate from the National Bureau of Revenue, it very clearly says that those countries who do not have a DTA cannot get this tax residency certificate. So if you can please look into that. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Yeah. Please hand over. There.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. We are very honored with your presence here. Being an avid fan of your writing, especially, so from the India way to why Bharat matters, and I feel it's precisely a starting point for my question as to, sir, we would like to know your thoughts on why Bharat matters in the next 5 years, in the 10 years, and what we as the expatriate community, especially in the Middle East, how we should contribute to adding charm to why Bharat matters.
Here. Bob.
Your Excellency, welcome to Bahrain. I'm Bob Thakur. I'm part of one of the oldest expatriate business community in Bahrain, and it was a privilege to have you at the Srinathji temple yesterday. Your book, Bharat Matters, and all those writings which you have said obviously highlights and accentuates what India is going to be in next few years. That's some question asked. How do we address the imbalance in the United Nations Security Council? We've been talking about it. It's an inevitable thing. You have said it, that it is inevitable. How do we break the stalemate, and when can we actually have that natural seat which we deserve? I believe, and I think everybody in this hall and 1.4 billion Indians believe we should have. Thank you.
One more. Here.
Good evening, Your Excellency. I am P.V. Radhakrishnan, a Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Awardee, as well as the President of the Bahrain Kerala Samajam. First of all, let me congratulate you. As you said, the world look at India differently today because of mainly the initiatives done by PM Modi ji in general and by you in particular. I take this opportunity to thank you for two different incidents which happened in this region. One, your swift involvement in releasing the former military officers who were jailed in Qatar, which has made us all proud. Number two, I acknowledge with thanks your call in the midnight to your counterpart in Bahrain for clearing the chartered flights, between India and Bahrain. Having said that, one issue which I represent the Keralites actually, 60% of the Indian population in Bahrain are from Kerala, and our travel problems, increased day by day. There were, regular flights to Cochin, till recently. Now they have stopped. There is a case with Trivandrum as well as the Calicut. Please look into this. Number one. Number two, see, out of the Indian community, 60% are from the Keralites. The Hindu community in the South Indian community, or predominantly the Keralite and Tamil and Telugu community, they don't have a place for practicing their faith. Temple. Actually, there is a temple in Manama, but we people follow other rituals, South Indian rituals. So your intervention in getting a space for getting to establish a temple will be highly appreciated. Number three, actually, we social clubs. We all practice our culture. Our culture. We do have festivals, all those things. So we would appreciate if you put some pressure to get us more freedom, in the sense that permissions, for conducting programs, for collecting sponsorship. So this is a big issue for our social clubs. Thank you very much.
I think PBSA awardees can get to ask many questions within one question. That's a very special trait that you have. But let me start with the double taxation avoidance agreement. My sense, the reason why there wasn't one earlier was because of the perception in India that there wasn't a tax. The absence of a corporate tax, in a sense, led to a lack of interest in this matter. So I must share with you, it is something we discussed today, and we need to understand the changes which are taking place in the Bahrain taxation system, and a better understanding will enable us to respond to that situation, because quite frankly, if we have it with, I don't know if we have it with everybody in MENA, but definitely we have it with everybody in GCC, that I know. So let us look at that, because obviously, a country which is so positive, and communities elsewhere are benefiting from it, we see no reason why the same should not happen here. But we will need a little bit of time here, because you also know it is something which is negotiated. But I do wish to assure you that it's on our radar, it has been discussed, and we will look at it going down the road. There were two clubbed questions, but let me come to the why Bharat matters. Look, we are already the most populous country in the world, but that itself doesn't mean that much, because we have been among the most populous countries now for many years. So what has changed? Not just our numbers. What has actually changed is the capability, the confidence, the impact that Bharat makes on the world. Because at the end of the day, the world is competitive. The world looks to see if some other country or some other people, do they impact my life or not? You can be in large numbers and impact very few people. You won't matter. But you can be in small numbers and impact a lot of people. You'll matter. But if you are in large numbers and impactful, that's like a double impact you make on the world. So if you see today, where is there, you ask me next 5 years, I'd say 5 to 10 years, where will the growth come for the global economy? I think the answer is India. Bharat will be a big part of that growth. Where we speak today, there's a knowledge economy, world of AI. So AI needs people. What does AI need at the end of the day? It needs chips, it needs electricity, and it needs people. And you will then apply the combination of all of that to different products and different services. So where is the talent pool in the world? A large part of it is in India. When you see in terms of, the new demands in a way, that, an economy which is $4 trillion, which is today growing at that kind of speed. Again, look at it from the world's point of view, that why, we see today almost every week, we see, there's a foreign delegation, there's a foreign leader, there's a foreign business delegation. Why is that? Again, because they see that in many, many areas there is that demand. But there is also the part which we will impact the world, that whatever you might say, we are a civilization. We bring to bear, in a way, when you speak about our practices, we bring to bear all the attributes of 5,000 years of people living together. When we do things in the world, we don't do it in haste. We think about the consequences. We try to consider, the attitude and interest of everybody else involved in that issue. So there is a unique quality about us, which I think people are beginning to see. In fact, when I ended, I said, look, why is it we are able to talk to parties who don't talk to each other? Because I think somewhere there is a certain objectivity about us, that we don't take one-sided positions. We try to consider, even in our own lives, there is a certain, because we are in a way so pluralistic, we are multi-faith, we are multi-language, we don't take one dimension alone. I think this makes us very different, and I would argue that it gives us a particular sort of positioning in a world which is why Bharat matters. Now what we have to do, sir, is to make that positioning accepted by the UN, the body of the UN. And my guess is today, actually, if I'm very honest with you, I think if you have a vote in the UN about who you want to see out there, I have no doubt, that there will be support for us. However, this is one of those situations, it's like a club where you're asking the present club members, saying, let another person become member of that club. So they all, have different degrees of hesitation there. But I am confident. I am confident for this reason, precisely because of what I have said. Our weight, our capability, our contribution, our impact. It will become harder and harder with each passing year. I mean, if I even were to look at the last 2 years, it's very interesting. We had the presidency of the G20, okay, in 2023. Many countries have had this presidency before us. One issue had been there in the G20 for many years, which is when they selected the top 20 G20 is the top 20 economies of the world, okay? Obviously, there were very few African members because they weren't in the top 20. So in Africa, there's been a long-standing demand saying, okay, give Africa collectively a place. Every G20 would come, and I've attended the last 10, I can tell you. Every G20 would end up in the same way. People say, yes, we should do it. Then the meeting would take place and say, yeah, this time we couldn't do it. Next time somebody will do it. Okay? This is how it was going. Now, in our case, we said, look, Africa has a reason, it's a just cause, somebody needs to make that effort, it's our turn, let's make it. So, now what does it do? Today, there are 54 African countries. Believe me, each one of them today says, look, whatever you might say, the Indians did it, and we didn't gain anything by doing it. There's no self-interest involved. But we did it when they know that many others could have done it but did not do it. The same story, for example, went true for vaccines. That think about that vaccine period, where there was a shortage of vaccine. There's almost like, those who had it were hanging on to it. The rich, the developed countries, there were countries which had 4, 5, 6 times the number of vaccine doses as the size of the population. One country I read had 8 times that size, and they were still asking you for vaccine supply after having 8 times the supply. And yet there were countries where there was not one dose. There were small islands. Now, many of them later told us that they actually had no hope. They had given up the idea. They thought COVID will come, COVID will go, others will get vaccinated, God only knows what will happen to us. Now, it was not necessary for us to supply them with vaccines. I mean, we kind of did it, we paid for much of it ourselves. But what we did was we stepped forward for countries who were left behind. Now, even today it is now, you can say, 3 years, 2 to 3 years since vaccination is over. Last month, I was with the Prime Minister in the Caribbean, in Guyana. And we had a meeting of Caribbean countries. even today they talk about it. In fact, one after another, they stood up and said, look, Prime Minister Modi, we never had a chance to meet you in person after that. So the first thing we want to do is at least say thank you. Now, when you say, why Bharat matters, these are all reasons why Bharat matters. Africa says, okay, here's a country which is willing to speak up for us. A lot of the small island states say, okay, here's somebody willing to do COVID for us. So we have that sense today that, even if our own direct interests are not involved, we are still willing to step forward. And I think that is why our UN Security Council seat will gain more and more support. And I honestly believe that it cannot be stopped forever. At some stage, we will definitely create a situation where our membership would be inevitable. There were some practical issues that you raised. Travel problems. I would say, there are a set of different issues here. One part of it is the airlines themselves. You are connected with the industry, you know better than me. Today in India, the airlines are privatized. So it's in many ways a decision which they have to make. But certainly, we will encourage them to look at the Gulf generally, but especially those countries in the Gulf where the services, the flights, the number, the capacity is less, and even that is actually today not being fully serviced. So I will, certainly, speak to them, and I'll also speak to my cabinet colleague, Ram Mohan Naidu ji, who deals with it. On the issue of, the temple, your cultural activities, etc. Look, again, my urging to you would be, this is a society where there is a lot of goodwill for us, a lot of respect for us. I've heard people say very, very warm things about the community. I think you are in a position to find a way of getting the authorities to understand and appreciate these requirements as legitimate. Certainly, as a partner government, from our side, we will be supportive of your aspirations. But it is important that they hear it primarily from the community, because at the end of the day, they must feel that this is a decision which is something between the government here and the community here. We are your well-wishers, obviously, and we are the government's well-wishers as well. So from our side, whatever we can do, we would, but I do think that the primary urging should come from the community. So we can take one round.
One more round. Vivek.
Thank you, Your Excellency. During your intriguing speech, you mentioned about chartered accountants. So introduce myself, I'm CA Vivek Gupta, Chairperson of Institute of Chartered Accountants of Bahrain chapter. I have a request and a question. So chartered accountants are backbone of financial economy in many countries, not just India, Indian chartered accountants. However, despite that fact, CA is not recognized qualification in GCC, any of the GCC country. Though we are in discussion with our parent body to get it recognized, but till date, we are also relied on our BCom or BSc degrees to get the visas to work in the region. So if something can be looked into those notes, that will be really appreciated. And the question is, any message you have for the chartered accountants in the region? Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Thomas. I am an advocate, Indian advocate practicing or consulting in Bahrain. there are some agreements, mutual cooperation agreement on civil, commercial and criminal matters signed back in 2004. But there are no rules made of it. So we cannot implement the judgment issued in Bahrain in India, nor judgment issued vice versa. But last year, I think, in UAE, with UAE, India signed or implemented all the rules. Now any judgment can be enforced in India easily. So if something can be done, like the double taxation, because as the trade grows, there are a lot of disputes. I myself have around 5-6 cases, judgment from Bahrain to be executed in India. And I am finding it very difficult to do it. My second request, see, there are a lot of low income class people here, and there is an inheritance issue. See, in Bahrain, there are very clear rules, laws, regulations, and they are implementing it. The issue here is the cost of getting a judgment in Bahrain is much higher. And a low income worker who should get, 1,000 dinar or 500 dinar out of his settlement or salary or anything, he may be unable to do it. So if something can be done on a government to government basis, it will be very helpful. Thank you, sir.
The lady, please.
Hello, Excellency, sir. Hello, sir. It's a great honor to be here. Myself, Dr. Tejinder Kaur Sarna. I am the Vice President of the Indian Ladies Association, the oldest women expat group in the entire GCC. In this political forum, I am going to ask, or I think it's important to acknowledge the human part of the leadership. Sir, Honorable Sir, can I ask you, how do you personally manage the stress that your job requires? It would be very helpful for everyone sitting here. How do you manage the stress, and how do you cope up with the stress that every second you face? Thank you.
So there, yeah. Please. The lady there.
Good evening, Honorable Minister Dr. Jaishankar, Your Excellency Mr. Jacob, distinguished members, guests, and the audience. My name is Antara. I'm from Assam. I'm a little bit overwhelmed to meet you in person. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to meet you and be a part of this wonderful gathering. Being a proud Indian and a wellness professional myself, I feel highly proud and inspired how India has become a global leader in promoting wellness to the world. Through its many initiatives like in International Yoga Day, emphasize on Ayurveda, wellness, tourism, etc. So your effort to strengthen India's heritage with the world deeply resonates with my passion for sharing India's culture to the world. And I'm also grateful for Indian embassy around the world and in Bahrain for promoting wellness in many ways. And I have been very fortunate to be a part of many of these initiatives. I have two questions.
I think you answered her stress question.
Thank you. Thank you. As yoga and wellness have gained global recognition, what steps the Indian government is taking further to integrate wellness wellness practices further? And my second question is that how can wellness professional like me be actively associated with Indian Embassy or other institutions around the globe to amplify wellness, heritage and wellness legacy worldwide. Thank you.
We'll take one last one. Yeah.
Honorable External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and His Excellency Indian Ambassador Shri Vinod K. Jacob. Good evening, sir. My name is Jagdish. I am from Telugu Kala Samiti, President, Bahrain. It works under Ministry of Social Development. It is recognized, and we continuously work with Indian Embassy, and we represent Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So we do many welfare activities. In Bahrain, around 50,000 blue collars are there. So we are doing a lot of welfare service with the help of Indian Embassy. They are very greatly cooperate. They are helping us to solve many problems. Thank you for that. And what I got an idea is, we are getting some support from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And central government also, can we have a separate cell for these welfare activities? So it will be helpful, I feel. That is my first question. And also we are doing a lot of welfare and for rich culture, heritage. It is a 25 years old organization. We are doing a lot of activities. So sometimes we are facing some sponsorship issues, everything. So to do more better, suppose some land or some for constructing a building, any support from the central government, like these organizations, it will be helpful, sir. And two more questions for India purpose, sir. India, because growing very fast and it is doing very well, but we are having a lot of IITs, NITs, research centers there. But still I feel that research center side, we need more research is required, sir. Because everything we should be able to produce, India should be able to produce. So research side, like IIT, how NITs are there, we should have a separate research colleges, and this very, very important, sir. And one more thing is, I am basically from Andhra Pradesh. I worked in the nuclear power plant, and after that I worked in combined cycle power plants. It's a combined cycle gas power plants. And now in India, in Andhra Pradesh, all the combined cycle power plants are closed conditions, sir. Because why the reason is lack of gas. Because 5,000 crores of construction plants, banks are, it is like a scrap, sir. So it is become scrap. So I think maybe some expert committee may be needed to reopen this gas power plant, sir. Because in front of us, we are seeing this one. I have written the letters to the government also regarding this one, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, thank you all. And let me start with our chartered accountant friend there. I would say anything I can do for, what is my message? Chartered accountants are very important people. And I think after my boss and my doctor, you come next in my order of priority. There are things I have to do annually which reminds me how important chartered accountants are. But honestly, I was not aware of what you are saying. I have to look at it in terms of recognition of CA, because my impression is a little bit different, okay? Because I do recollect some problem with chartered accountants had in Kuwait, and my memory could be off. I didn't get the impression that it was not like they were not recognized at all. But if you can send to the ambassador, something, I'd be very happy to follow up, because it is a very critical profession. It is the backbone at the end of the day of business. And we certainly want business to flourish between us and the GCC. So if there is a lacuna to be addressed, I'd be happy to do that. On the second issue, this mutual cooperation agreement which you raised, again, what often happens is some details, because when we look at the GCC countries, and Bahrain is very much a part of that. I can see a situation, we need many more, the original framework is like a very basic framework, okay? As the relationship deepens in many more areas, we will need many more agreements. If you look today at some of, our big, deep relationships, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands of agreements that we have with some of those countries. So in your case, I say this, but to others also, that if any of you in your particular profession or area of interest feel that there should be an agreement which we have not done, feel that an agreement has been done but has not been followed up, see any kind of gap, we are open to suggestions from your side. What is it we need to make this framework more relevant, more efficient, and in a way more practical on the ground? So I would be welcoming of any of this, and I would request you to just give me something specific to work on. I'd be happy to take it up. On your inheritance issue, again, I must say it is something new. Some years ago we revised we have something called the Indian Community Welfare Fund. We revised it in order to cater for the needs of blue-collar workers. And, we have a provision which deals with legal support. But I'm not sure it actually addresses this situation that you have referred to. I will see, here what can be done. Certainly, such people, this category of people, we need to be creative about the way we can find, we can't tell them the rules don't provide for it. I think we need some thinking. I'll talk to Ambassador, I'll talk to my colleagues as well who deal with this. The next two questions, it was not a facetious remark, when you said how, look, in a way you can say everybody has stress of some kind. Partly experience itself deals with a lot of things, if you've been doing something for a long time, you take everything in your stride. But still, there are situations, and but I think everybody handles it differently. Sometimes, just being with your family helps you deal with stress. The young lady there spoke about wellness practices. I, over these years, have started paying maybe a little bit more attention to my own mornings than I used to before. So I think if you do some, you stretch out in the morning, or you do yoga, or you play some sports, I think all these things build a degree of, I would say, you start your day much more at ease with yourself. But one great stress reliever is actually to have a very supporting environment around you. Nothing like good colleagues, good friends, and a good community. You're all helpful to, I've come to a place like Bahrain, I said, okay, this visit's going to be a nice visit, because I know everybody is going to say nice things. I know everything is going to move forward. So look, you took a little bit of load off my shoulders. So, but on your question about what can we do, I would relate to you the set of conversations we had with Prime Minister Modi when we were looking at this idea of International Day of Yoga. He had this idea when he came. He had just become Prime Minister in 2014. He had come to New York, and he brought up this idea. This was September of 2014, and his point was, look, different countries, different organizations practice different kinds of yoga. There is interest, but in a way there's need both for some degree of encouragement, but some degree of very light, you can say, guidance kind of, but it should not be so, people should not feel somebody's trying to control it, because it's a bottom-up it's something which has started by people. It's after all, it's a civilizational tradition. So I do make that point to you. I think today, when I look at the world, I cannot think of any cultural practice, any wellness practice which is more pervasive than yoga. I mean, it's heads and shoulders about anything which from any other culture. And part of the reason is we have let it kind of grow and flower and, spread on its own. So it has to be a kind of almost like a popular movement, a popular interest which is moving forward. Clearly, the embassy can help. I feel one of the reasons we do International Day of Yoga is to enthuse people, to create that moment when people step forward. Many people hesitate to do that. Even I used to hesitate to do it till 10 years ago. So to come out, to spend time with others, to do it as a collective activity, and then it spreads. So by all means, I think the embassy would be very supportive. But at the end of the day, the more community-based it is, the more voluntary it is, the more of a ground movement it is. I think that is really the way it should actually develop. On finally the issue of, do we have a separate cell for wellness? Different state governments, wherever there's a community from a particular state, a state naturally will take interest. There's nothing wrong with that. But where an embassy is concerned, the embassy is there for welfare. It is the primary task of an embassy. It is not, you ask me what is the welfare cell for Indian Embassy Bahrain, he is the welfare cell. That is today, what an embassy is supposed to be about. And the image which we had over many years, that there's a government office, you can't get in, nobody will see you, they won't talk to you properly, they'll tell you come back next week. We're trying to break out of that image, And then this idea, the blue collar people, because often, in many countries, many societies, people would not look at workers, they would look at people they know socially. So this is today, in a way, the change that we are trying to bring about in foreign policy in our embassies, and I can see, after all, I've also spent my lifetime doing this. I can see the change today, and here again I say this, it will change when we get feedback. That we cannot anticipate everything. We will not have a solution for everything. But if from the different communities, from the ground, people tell us, have you looked at this? There is this problem, you need to do more of that. We will do some, maybe we'll not do everything. But your feedback, your involvement, your support, this is what will make us a good embassy, a good government, and a great country. And that is why, we need this constant, communication today between the community and between the Indian government, with the ambassador, with the other diplomats. So once again, really, thank you all very much. Thank you for taking the time out. It's really been very, very good to meet all of you.
Thank you, sir. Please rise to give a standing ovation to sir.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Your Excellency. With that, we come to the close of this evening. Kindly join us for dinner.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to have all of you join us for this edition of the India-Japan Forum. Over the next 35 odd hours, we will discuss key strategic themes, which will all be off the record. Please note that the conversation with Dr. S. Jaishankar will be on the record. And for all participants using the translation device, please note channel 1 is for English and channel 2 is for Japanese. I would like to now invite Rajan Navani, Chairman Ananta Center, Chairman and Managing Director Jetline Group of Companies and Founder CEO Jet Synthesis to inaugurate the forum. Please.
Thank you, and a very, very good morning and a warm welcome to everyone to the third India-Japan Forum. You know, having built on the foundations of the first two, I believe the third is always very significant. It is a time to take off and to really add many more years of a fulfilling agenda and partnership, which is very future looking. So again, on that high note, a very warm welcome to all of you. It is truly an honor for us to have with us here Dr. Jaishankar, the Honorable Minister for External Affairs, whose both partnership as well as support to this forum and to Ananta has been immeasurable. It is under his unwavering guidance that the Ministry of External Affairs has also partnered with us here today for this event. You know, he has truly put India, you know, at the center stage in the world, and I think this is a time, again, as I mentioned, for us to see how we can really take this relationship to its next level. I'm also very pleased to welcome a very rich Japanese delegation. We have Mr. Nobimutsu Hayashi-san, the Governor of the Japan Bank for International Cooperation. Very warm welcome to you. Vice Minister Takehiko Matsuo-san, welcome. Ambassador Keiichi Ono-san, and many distinguished participants, both from India and Japan. And we truly hope that we'll make these next 35 hours, as was mentioned, a very meaningful discussion around, I would say, new issues that will actually set the agenda for the future. So if you see the way we have structured this today, it is to be able to create and open up discussions around areas which are very important for countries like India and Japan to collaborate on, because I think one thing we all realize is that the potential of this relationship is a lot more than what we have been able to achieve. And I think the ability for us to unlock those areas and to see how we can take those, you know, issues forward through a forum like this is something that we truly look forward to, and encourage each one of you to participate and engage in some of these discussions as we move forward. I would also like to mention that, you know, we are looking at an era or a time when technology particularly, and you see AI, semiconductors, geopolitics, strategy, defense, everything actually is converging around, you know, specific agendas and issues. And the ability for us to not only take specific, you know, initiatives that will deepen specific areas, but also take a holistic umbrella kind of a discussion forward is something that is a truly, you know, opportunistic thing for us to do through this forum. So encourage each one of you to participate in that manner. Before I invite Dr. Jaishankar and Indrani to take this conversation and to open up this forum, I also want to let everybody know that today is our CEO Indrani Bakchi's birthday, and we are all here, and I would, you know, love to wish her a very happy birthday. And I think, as we were discussing, it is something that, Indrani, please, we have a small bouquet for you. She has put a lot of effort to put this together. I think each one of you knows her personally, and we wish you a very happy year ahead. So over to Indrani and Dr. Jaishankar. Very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here today. A special welcome to Dr. Jaishankar. Thank you so much for being such a support for our forums and all the work that we do. The relationship between India and Japan is not just special, it has acquired layers over the years, and you've been here for our last session, our last forum as well. And I was just wondering if I could sort of ask you to cast your mind over the last year. And since we all love lists, you think of 5 interesting good things that have happened between India and Japan in the last year, since we last spoke at this forum.
Well, first of all, let me join the others in wishing you. On your question, let's say 5 things which have happened in the last year, 5 positive things. I would say, to me, one, we have this discussion underway with our Japanese colleagues about how do we create a solid human resource base for the relationship. There's a big target, ambitious target we are working on. And the idea really is whether, through a combination of more students, more, mobile talent, more corporate internships, training, can we actually create a base of people who can service this relationship? This discussion today is underway. It was initiated by the Japanese side. We are obviously very interested. And I actually probably see that right now as the most interesting possibility, because I think one of the constraints for the relationship has always been a lack of people, who are deployable, who are conversant with each other's countries, because there is still, I would say, we haven't developed at a societal, systemic level the kind of understanding and bonding and comfort that we should have. A second area I would pick would be actually defense and security. Because it's a difficult, between any 2 countries, it's not normally an early area of cooperation, because you need a high degree of trust and understanding to do something in defense. We've had, I think, this year progress on a particular system we are working for with the Navy called Unicorn. We actually had exercises where Japanese military, self-defense personnel were present in India. So when I look at the kind of policy exchanges and now beginning to move into technology and products, that's a evolution which is an important one. Third, in terms of business, because that's at the core of our relationship, I think there too we've had some sort of good steps, big steps. One I would point to is the Toyota-Kirloskar, collaboration has become much bigger. Another one is the Nippon Steel ArcelorMittal project. So we are actually seeing a kind of a scaling up of business. So these are businesses already in India who are doubling down or more on their presence. the fourth, which is really more of a trend, but I think offers a lot of possibility, is Japan is today revitalizing its semiconductor sector. And India, after a very long period of neglect, actually is also, we've announced a semiconductor mission. There are a lot of things which are happening. It's interesting, both of us also happen to be working with Taiwan. There are, to me, I'm seeing the beginnings of something potentially important here and potentially really significant for both countries. Now, normally I would say, okay, it's just beginning, so would it really rate being in that list of 5? Normally I would say no, but I would in this case make an exception, because I think this is such a vital field, which is going to be so important in a way for I would say the balances geopolitical level equations in this coming decade, that the makings of a semiconductor collaboration to me would be up there. And finally, to me, in a sense, I hear much more discussion and interest and initiatives actually from organizations and people who've been involved in the relationship, which is really at one level some dissatisfaction that we haven't, why is it we have not been able to do more, but also some determination that we want to do more. So we've had we've had an industry level initiative saying, okay, what can we do to increase training, language skills? I think that's something which is useful. We ourselves in India are reforming our higher education system. I think we are more open to universities. We are more open to having our students go out, other students come in, collaborative campuses. So to me, this ferment today, this desire really to improve, to enhance the quality of the relationship would be the last one.
So it's interesting what you just said, because what it means is from the stratospheric level of government and high strategy, we are moving to a much more people-to-people part and more company-to-company part of the relationship. And that will take some doing, obviously, because there is a language issue here, and that we should be able to overcome fairly if we are determined about this. But if you are looking at the flip side of this relationship, what are the 3 challenges that you might encounter, or that we might encounter, and how do we guard against that?
Well, Indrani, I think the main challenge, in a way, you have yourself implied. We've never had problems between India and Japan.
No.
But not having problems doesn't mean everything works well. Not having problems can also be we're both being happy in the same room, but it stays there. So we need something more. So I would say, how do you take good sentiment and make it into a practical plan? I think it's that journey which has been a challenge for the relationship. And the kind of things that I described to you, which is really a deepening of business, more interest in, as I say, in education, in internships. I feel tourism, again. When I look today at the kind of spike in Indian tourists. We are in India, for the benefit of our Japanese colleagues, I must tell you, the foreign ministry issues the passport. So I have a good sense of how many passports we issue every year. And our passport issual is going up actually at the rate of almost 10 to 15% a year. And we are issuing pretty much between about 13 million to 15 million passports every year. And these are 10-year validity, so you can imagine accumulated what it's doing. In this country, foreign travel is growing. Interest in foreign tourism is growing. But we haven't yet seen any of this really directed at Japan. If you look at Southeast Asia today, look at Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, look at the Gulf, look at Europe, Indian tourists are really going there in very, very large numbers. So this, how that part of it, as I said, good sentiment, not yet, doesn't automatically translate into practical activity. That is challenge number one. Challenge number two, the supporting activities, more tourism, more education, that, and even incoming tourists is, we are not seeing that kind of numbers yet. And I would say, in a way, for me, the third issue is a belief that the government, somehow governments are going to build this relationship. Now, governments can lead this relationship, they can shape the relationship. But if you look at all the other big relationships that have changed for us, look at the American relationship, look at the Australian relationship, look at the Gulf relationship. They've also changed because, the government has given the signal, but there's a huge societal kind of backup which has happened. And if this relationship needs that kind of backup. And that's really when we can actually get it moving.
You need a nuclear deal, basically.
Some equivalent.
Well, a big ticket agreement between India.
No, not necessarily. Everything doesn't happen with a big bang. I think often you can get, even that I would argue is a bit overstated. If you ask me, she's referring to the nuclear deal with America, which we did, which was a turning point in the relationship. But I would argue that H-1B was actually as impactful as the nuclear deal, and in many ways much more long-lasting than the nuclear deal. Which is not to say the nuclear deal wasn't a huge achievement. Relationships do not develop necessarily through quantum jumps. Okay, they can also develop layer by layer, bit by bit, things happening. And I think we have not looked in the past when we say, okay, we need better relations with Japan. Everybody says, oh, that means more investment. Answer is yes. But just saying, there should be more investment, A, doesn't make that investment happen. And B, even if some of that happens, isn't good enough. I think we need the rest of the supporting activities. And there are models. When I look at Japan's relationship with Southeast Asia, when I look at Japan's relationship with its own neighbors in Northeast Asia, I think there are lessons for us that when I look at the kind of student numbers from those countries, when I look at the number of tourists from those countries, look at the number of flights from those countries, hotels from those countries, those are all, missing pieces in our relationship.
And that's, what you said about not having a problem in the relationship is not a driver of the relationship. It
Absolutely.
doesn't drive the relationship.
In fact, I would, in some ways, it's a negative.
Yes, it is. It's because once you have a problem, you look for a solution, and that has other implications. That's actually an interesting view. Of course, we will. Everybody is looking at the elections in the U.S. and how they will. How that will have implications for other parts of the world. In your view, what would be the implication of a Trump presidency 2.0 on, say, the Quad? And while we are at it, sometimes you hear a narrative in Japan about India being the weak link in the Quad. Why can we dispel such a notion?
Your first question, how would a Trump administration look at the Quad? The Quad this time actually was restarted by the Trump administration. In fact, 2017, it was the first year of the Trump administration when it started at a vice minister's level. Then in 2019, it was again under the Trump administration that it moved from the vice minister's level to the foreign minister's level. In 2020, when there was almost a global lockdown, one of the few physical diplomatic meetings which took place in the calendar year 2020 was actually a Quad meeting in Tokyo. So if I were to go by the past record, in fact, I would argue that the Trump administration deserves a lot of the credit for the takeoff of the Quad in its second incarnation. And and the fact that the Quad has since advanced would only validate their judgment. And there is every reason for us to expect that, they would say, we got it right the first time, it's done well, and therefore we should keep with it. I think that's a reasonable extrapolation from where they started. In many ways, most of us are conversant with President Trump's views about alliances and, America's share and burden sharing and things like that. Now, those concerns and those arguments actually don't apply to the Quad at all.
Yes.
Because, Quad is a kind of everybody pays their fair share. So it's like everybody goes for dinner and you split the bill and everybody thinks it's the right thing to do. So if one looks at some of the concerns which President Trump has articulated in terms of America's commitments and why is America doing so much, that doesn't apply to Quad. In fact, Quad is a kind of model which is very comfortable with a much more everybody pays their share outlook of international engagement. On your second question, look, what has happened in the Quad is there are many debates which happen in the Quad, which happens, 4 countries with 4 different histories. You agree on some things, you don't agree on some things. Often what happens is when you don't agree on an issue, then another country would come and say, that country is a weak link. In our country, very frankly, people have said Japan is the weak link at times. There were times when the administration transitioned in the United States. Nobody was initially sure how the transition would affect the Quad. And remember, Australia was the country which in the initial round of Quad, we felt the Australians pulled the plug on Quad and the Australians felt they should pull the plug before we pulled the plug on Quad. Some of these happens. I think today we are beyond that phase. I don't think there is a weak link in the Quad at all. In fact, it's very interesting if you ask, let us say somebody like Mike Pompeo, saying, okay, at the end of your tenure as Secretary of State, tell me 4 or 5 big achievements, he would put Quad one of them. I suspect if you ask Tony Blinken the same question next month, he'll probably give you the same answer. So the fact is today, meeting by meeting, quarter by quarter, year by year, level by level, Quad is actually growing. You look at the agenda of Quad, it's actually one of the most expansive sort of intergovernmental coordination that is today in evidence.
Before I open it up for a couple of questions from the audience, I wanted to ask you, two things that that we think about. First, what if you had to explain our current China relationship to Japan, particularly in the wake of the agreement that we've just got to restore patrolling after the conflict in Galwan. How would you do that? And I think we can start.
And beyond it? Okay, all right. Look, in a way, India and Japan do share the attribute of both being neighbors of China. We are a land neighbor, you are a maritime neighbor, but neighbors are neighbors. We've had our experiences. I mean, in a way you could argue every experience is unique, but for every experience also has, lessons for everybody else, which is why we all watch international relations, that we assess from every experience and every relationship what is the learning for other countries. In our particular case, we had stable relationship with China. It was growing in many respects. In terms of trade, it was very, very substantial. It still is very substantial. There had been a certain amount of investment, mostly from China to India. There were some issues we have which you don't have, which is a very imbalanced trade. We've had a lot of market access issues in China. Japanese companies don't face it to the same degree. And trade figures, the trade balances are very different for Japan. But our entire relationship with China was predicated on the fact that the border areas would remain peaceful and stable. And then in 2020, and we had agreements to ensure that. In 2020, for some reason, which is still a matter of speculation, the Chinese chose to bring a lot of forces to the border areas. And obviously we responded with counter deployments. And then we had an incident in which a number of soldiers got killed. And obviously this impacted the relationship. So it has taken us 4.5 years to actually negotiate the disengagement of forces, which is really the fact that the militaries are too close at some places along the line of actual control. We have still challenges left with us. I mean, I made a statement in Parliament on this subject, and we still have to de-escalate, because what we have done is disengage forces from close proximity, but we have a de-escalation because there's still a very large number of forces. But there are, big issues and question marks which have raised, and it has impacted the entire relationship. So now we have to sit down and discuss with China, how do we, in a sense, rebuild our relationship, and that is an exercise that still has to be undertaken.
Before I open up to the audience, we have something else that we want to do, which is we have a video message from your counterpart in Tokyo. So Takashi Iwaya-san very kindly sent us a video message for the forum, for which we are immensely grateful. And I would like to play the message right now.
Namaskar, konnichiwa. 外務大臣の岩谷武です。ジャイシャンカル外相、アナンタセンターの皆様、ご列席の皆様、日本政府を代表して第3回日印フォーラムの開催をお祝い申し上げます。このフォーラムは2021年以来、両国の幅広い分野の専門家が活発に議論を交わす場として、日印関係の大きな潜在性を具体化させるために、その役割を果たしてきました。 今回のフォーラムでも二国間の伝統的な協力分野に加え、AI といった新しい分野の議題も含まれています。本年で10周年を迎える特別戦略的グローバルパートナーシップの一層の強化に向けて、有益な議論が行われることを期待しています。日本とインドは法の支配や民主主義といった基本的価値と戦略的利益を共有するパートナーであり、インド太平洋地域の平和と安定に大きな責任を負っています。先日もイタリアでの G7 外相会合の際に、ジャイシャンカル外相と会談を行い、自由で開かれたインド太平洋の実現に向けた協力を確認しました。日米豪印を通じた実践的な協力も着実に成果を上げています。このような同志国による連携をさらに進めていく考えです。また、日印両国が国際社会の平和と繁栄に貢献していく基盤として、二国間関係の強化も重要です。安全保障分野では、重層的な共同訓練が行われています。また、艦艇搭載用の複合アンテナ、ユニコーンの移転に向けた協議も進められています。この分野での連携を一層強化するため、両国の安全保障協力の指針となっている共同宣言の改定を進めてまいります。経済面でも、対印、官民投融資5兆円目標の達成に向けて着実な進展が見られます。また、現地の日本企業がインドを拠点として将来の成長が期待できるアフリカなどの第三国への輸出にも取り組んでいます。こうした日本企業の活動を日本政府としても支援することで、Make in India, Make for Worldに貢献し、両国のみならず、世界の成長と繁栄に向けて協働していきたいと思います。さらに、二国間の中長期的な柱として、人的交流も重要です。この分野は大きなポテンシャルを有する分野です。両国の官民が知恵を出し合い、取り組みを拡大させていきたいと考えています。最後に、本日の日印フォーラムの成功と皆様のさらなるご活躍を記念し、私の挨拶とさせていただきます。ダニアワード、ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Well, clearly, two foreign ministers are thinking alike, because he could have almost been talking like you. So at least at that...
He was talking like me.
At your level, certainly there is so much of convergence. I think there is a reason for us to work harder. And one of the things that you spoke about earlier, where it comes to people, where it comes to education, internships, manufacturing, a key element of that is mobility. We have mobility agreements with a couple of other key partners, particularly, say, Germany. But one of the things that we don't have with Japan is a mobility arrangement.
No, we actually have a mobility arrangement. It's called Special Skill Worker SSW arrangement, but it hasn't really taken off in any meaningful manner. I think this is going to be a very important subject in the coming days for two reasons. One, actually in terms of, the Japanese, not just Japanese, we are seeing it across the world. We're seeing it in Europe. It was, I would say, one of the main subjects of discussion when Chancellor Scholz was here. In fact, the Germans increased the the mobility, the specialized skill visas every year from 20,000 to 90,000 a year, because their companies need those skills. So one issue even on the areas which we have already agreed on, which is, let us say, health, or in many ways I would say a medium skill sectors. I think Japan has demands for workers, for professionals, and it's a question of where they choose to source it from. And obviously India has a possibility which has not yet been effectively explored. But to my mind, the second one is much more, in a sense, strategically significant, which is in many areas, if you look at the semiconductor industry as an example, but even I would say when we look at AI, there is going to be a lot of mobility which will be associated with the growth of AI and with the growth of digital businesses. Now, the United States has been very aggressive on this, and we've also had actually the reverse of mobility. We have mobility of enterprises coming into India. That today there are close to almost 2,000 global capability centers in India, set up in India by foreign companies. And some of them are very big. I mean, they employ tens of thousands of people. And there was a study which said that their exports alone today account for close to $150 billion. So you are going to have, to some extent, enterprise mobility into India and talent mobility out of India. And I think the crucial technology relationships which we are going to have in India will have, are going to be the ones where this kind of mobility is factored into the arrangement. And certainly that has been our experience with US and Europe. And we hope that it will be a conversation with Japan as well.
Well, certainly it's a disruptive force as well, this entire movement. As I said, if you could raise your hands for questions, but while we are waiting for the first question, if you sort of put on your thinker's hat, what's your longer view? What's your longer term view of Japan, of the relationship? But also, if we, given what we've just spoken about in the last half an hour, what would you say would be our short-term imperatives to get the show on the road, kind of thing?
I would say, in terms of the longer term, sometimes you can think ahead by thinking back. When I think back at the history of Asia for the last 150 years, I don't think any country has done more to shape the modernization of Asia than Japan has done. It did it first by modernizing itself, then by having that impact in the countries around its immediate periphery. It was a crucial factor in the modernization and growth of the ASEAN nations. So there is in a way impact and influence and almost a driving force in Japan, which is historically there. The record is there, the evidence is there. I mean, sometimes, when I look at it, I'm not sure in Japan itself people necessarily understand that or recall that or fully appreciate it. So there is therefore a larger, I would say, contribution that Japan has made and can continue to make. So when I look today at, in this region, the Indian subcontinent, if India and the Indian subcontinent are actually to make that big jump out there, which can be the crucial partners, because there is such a strong record and because Japan is a country which has no political downside in this, especially in this region. It is only regarded positively in this region. I think there's a natural attraction to this partnership. It's also, in a broader way, I would say it's important that Japan play a bigger role in world politics, in the region's security and well-being, because if an important player, if a very substantial player doesn't make their full contribution, then what happens is the whole equation gets a little bit distorted. Then there is, at the end of the day, there is a diversity in the world and a balance which comes out of that diversity. So if everybody does their best and makes the fullest contribution, that balance is a very natural balance. If any country, for whatever reason, holds itself back a bit, then somebody else benefits, or there is a different result. So we definitely welcome a much more active Japan, a much more visible Japan, Japan which takes on more responsibilities, which has a greater presence, Japan with which we can partner in, as my counterpart, Minister Iwai said, I mean, not just in this region, even in places like Africa. And to my mind, they all go together. The bilateral relationship, what we do at a regional level, what we do at a global level. Remember, we are also G4 countries. We are the 4 countries who are seeking permanent membership of the Security Council. So even at that level, there's an aspiration, and we will realize it only when we help each other in that process.
Thank you. Can I invite questions, comments from the floor? Mr. Bauer.
Can you hear me? Hi, thank you for your comments this morning. Ernie Bauer from the U.S. I wonder what you think the prospects are for a greater development of the economic engagement within the Quad. I mean, can you imagine the Quad agreeing to open arteries of mobility, money, and ideas between the 4 Quad countries? And if so, what would that look like?
Can we take a couple more questions, because the Minister has a hard stop at economic.
Thank you very much. I have a question on the relationship between India and Japan. As you know, that our FDI has increased substantially to China, to ASEAN particularly, but flat for India. And one of the things I have heard from investors is that the labor regulations in India is extremely onerous. Of course, the Prime Minister has improved upon that, but it hasn't been effectively implemented. And the challenge for India is that you have a lot of people, but you have a scale issue. How much of a priority is unshackling this burden, the cholesterol artery of manufacturing in India? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trin. Shriparna.
Thank you, sir. I have a question with regards to the Quad. Very often, at least in the academic circles, there's no clarity on what exactly is the Quad doing, where is it headed. It's generally written off, saying that, it's not really going to make any sort of impact. So what is Quad doing? Why is there so much confusion regarding it?
Go ahead. Is there any other question? Please.
Thank you, because I think for the last 3 questions we mentioned about, the other speaker mentioned about the economic field and about relations. But as mentioned by the 2 people's speaker, that we mentioned about the people-to-people relation, especially in the education field. And I'm also a professor, and I'm really interested in how to enhance the opportunity for students of India, Japan, and also my country, which I'm going to present later on, but now the time for me to raise a question. How can we do something great, really a base? Because you are the leader for the student young generation in Japan and India and Southeast Asia country, especially Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you. I think
you know, the first question, can I imagine a more economic Quad, economically active Quad? Absolutely. I can imagine pretty much anything with Quad because it's actually been so nimble, so responsive, such an open architecture, and nobody, you know, people, none of the 4 countries have come with a rigid, you know, this is what we are going to do. In a way that answers the later question which is asked. People, you know, have come to the Quad meetings with a, you know, what's the new thing we're going to do? What can we add on to the relationship? Where is it the 4 of us working together can be better than the 4 of us working separately? So you had, you know, from telecom to climate event preparation to cyber, to HADR, to vaccine production, to even fellowships. My sense is the more we do, the more ambitious we get, and the nice thing about Quad is at the end of the day, these are understandings, you know. These are not in that sense treaty level commitments and relationships, but very effective nevertheless. So if, let us say, if there is a, I mean, we have been discussing ISET, critical emerging technologies in the Quad. We have been discussing supply chains in the Quad. In fact, even the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework initially came out of the Quad. It was meant to be a Quad event, and we actually suggested, why don't we make it larger? I do think the Quad is certainly a platform where the 4 countries can think much more seriously and practically about cooperation. On the second question, look on the FDI. Here's the issue. There's no question that India has become an easier place to do business. But we are also honest enough to accept there is a big scope for improvement out here. I mean, no country will ever be perfect, and we know we are far from that. Now, in different sectors, we have seen investments coming in. So I mentioned some notable ones today. So it is not like the FDI climate here is so difficult that countries can't come in. So here's my practical advice, because this is something which has also been a recurring conversation with our colleagues in Japan. Often we hear, you know, there are problems in India. Answer is yes, there are problems. But if an investor says, you fix all the problems, then I will think whether I'm going to come there or not. That investor is going to be waiting a long while. Because there will be others who will say, okay, you fix some of the problems, I'll come and I'll keep talking on the basis of my experience what else you need to fix. So I think somewhere Japanese companies also need to take the plunge. After all, when they went to some other, you know, when they went into Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia, it wasn't that conditions were perfect there. They went there and shaped the conditions. They had those conversations with those governments and with counterpart business. So I fully accept as a government, we are willing to continuously engage Japanese business to know what it is that they would like, reasonably, obviously, to see done better in this country. We are open to that. But a conversation with someone who's not even here is not going to be a serious conversation. So we will also need to see signs of commitment. On the question on the Quad and clarity, the reason you folks may be confused is because the Quad is different from pretty much other arrangements which have happened, and maybe you're not adjusting to reality. that there is a, people generally think when countries come together, there must be a treaty, there's a, remember 3 out of 4 Quad members are members of alliance systems. So one of the criticisms which we often hear is, the Quad is not working because the Quad is not like an alliance system. It was never meant to be one. Now, there were people who said, oh, the Quad's going to collapse because it had collapsed once before. But look at the actual record. So if there is lack of clarity about the Quad, it's not for the Quad to provide it, it's for the people to understand it. So maybe it's something you need to tell your colleagues and other people in those think tanks. Finally, on the students, look, I mean, it's very, I went to one of the main foreign language teaching universities in India. It's in Hyderabad. I asked them, in terms of student response, what is the most popular language? By far it was Japanese. Why is it so? Variety of reasons, cultural, people young people are very influenced by what they hear and read and see about Japan, employability, etc. But here's the problem. The demand for Japanese is 5-6 times the number of seats that they have. Our real problem in India, whether it is business or whether it is language teaching, we've not been able to scale up. We have many places which teach Japanese. The numbers are just too small. So if you ask me right now, what's our big challenge? Our big challenge is scaling up. Yep. We have a broad footprint, but not a deep footprint. And we are not continuously developing that footprint. And I regard today the limited number of students, the limited number of tourists, the limited number of interns, the limited number of mobility exchanges, I regard these as real constraints on the relationship. So I absolutely agree with you that I think we need to focus on students, and I think the Japanese side is thinking along very, very similar lines, at least Japanese government.
Yeah. Well, I think we've completely run out of time because I think the Minister has to be in Parliament. Thank you, Minister, for a fantastic start to the forum and for laying out our prerogatives for this forum, and I think we will be discussing pretty much everything that you've just spoken about. May I invite everybody to give a hand to the Minister. Thank you very much.
But still, thank you very much, and a round of applause once more to welcome him. So we stand at a momentous juncture in the journey as a global leader for India. We are seen as a very trusted, reliable global partner, and this has happened with a lot of hard work that has really happened. Your perspectives on the economy, the geopolitical scenarios, and how that will impact the Indian business as we go along. So with this, once again, a very, very warm welcome to you this afternoon, and over to you, Sanjay.
So keeping in the spirit of efficiency, we're going to have no more speeches. So I want to go straight into the question, but before that, I want to give you a sense, Honorable Minister, that the audience here and the membership of ASSOCHAM is lakhs of MSMEs and SMEs. Very few large corporates, but they are, but I suppose they have many, many forums. I think this forum is a forum which actually I think forms the backbone of all the large corporate supply chain. And we talk about a supply chain to the world, but frankly, MSMEs form the backbone of the OEMs here itself. And I don't think they get an opportunity to hear from a person like you. And today morning, Minister Goyal spoke a lot about ease of doing business and what it takes. And I think love to hear from your perspective. We're definitely entering an era of uncertainty, we know that. From your perspective and from your lens, this community, which I think forms the backbone of the industry, what should they know just as high points when we talk of uncertainty or certainty, and maybe delve that very quickly into opportunities and challenges for them as you see it. And then I will, go a little bit deeper into different areas, but I thought we just set the stage with that.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, and my good wishes to all of you. In a way, I can say that, everywhere in the world, actually MSME is the heart of business. Many years ago, more than 30 years ago, I went to Japan. And, sabke man mein hota hai, Japan, those days, Sony was big, Panasonic was big, you had these big names. But actually you discovered these big names are in the front. Behind every big name, there are 20,000 names. Some are known names, some are not known names. Without those 20,000 names, that big name cannot survive for 1 week. So everywhere, one point I must say, in every country, how you look after MSMEs is the key to how you look after the economy. And therefore, it is very, very, yes, the big corporates will have their interests and their that is legitimate, but I think there is an obligation on the part of the government to actually focus very, very heavily on MSMEs, and I want to share that with you. By the way, I must tell you, I also have MSME connection. For a long time, I lived in Noida. All my neighbors were MSME people, and I'm still very much, shall I say, I have some personal associations. And in fact, during COVID, one of the rest of the country was on lockdown, but ministers were on super duty. So sabki teen shift lagi hui thi. One of my shifts was to keep checking up, what was happening in terms of the industrial estates of the country. So I want to say this. Look, world today is actually, not just today, last 5 years, I would say, has been a very difficult place for a variety of reasons. We had COVID 2.5 years. We are having also a problem that as we open our economy, everybody thought openness, you get benefits of openness. Of course we got benefits of openness. But that same openness also became a gateway for goods which were produced by non-market economies, goods which were subsidized, to actually be, for those goods to be sent to India. And that is a competition which I would regard as an unfair competition. So a lot of our concerns today is how do we actually ensure that our MSME sector is actually protected from unfair competition. Now, what is the situation today in the world? I think even before November meaning the election abhi America mein hua tha, but even before November, I think there were a lot of serious problems in the world economy. And these problems are visible in different countries in different ways. Across the world, many countries, the manufacturing sector has been hit. MSME sector has been particularly hit. MSMEs have found it very difficult to deal with unfair competition in open economy. So the challenge which today many countries are facing, either you stop the unfair competition or you close the economy. Nobody wants to close the economy. So we have to find some solutions to deal with that unfair competition. And you can find that solution partly defensively, partly by supporting your own companies. So I would say, how to make it easier to do business, how to, improve credit support to companies, how to reduce bureaucracy, how to improve logistics, all this is part today of how to actually support industry in this country. Now, I also want to say one other thing, sometimes people say, wo manufacturing ka zamana chale gaya, that is for China, we can never compete, etc. if we do not have manufacturing in this country, we cannot have technology. जिस आदमी को, जिस देश को manufacturing की समझ नहीं है, how will they have the industrial climate to understand technology? If you don't understand technology, this era of AI, this era of space, this era of drones will miss out on it. So I would say today it is absolutely, I put it as one of the top priorities of the Modi government, that we have to push manufacturing in this country. We have to create more manufacturing zones. We have to improve logistics. We have to make ourselves more competitive. And I think we have made progress, but there is a lot that we have to do. One last comment. You said, what are the opportunities? Because mostly I've spoken about challenges. I think there are opportunities. You know, there is going to be in supply chain in the world, there is going to be some shifts. We can see, you know, after January, you know, what will be the, you know, the old equations may not be the same. There may be opportunities. There will also be some challenges for us. But overall, I would say, how can we make ourselves more efficient, more competitive? That is the way by which actually we will be more effective in the world.
Thank you. I think we tried to address a lot of that today morning. And I must tell you, I missed introducing, we had instituted a study on EODB, which is a much misused word. We call it cost of doing business. And we had Professor Charan Singh, who's sitting here, professor from IIM Bangalore, ex-RBI chair. So we did a study grounds up, and with some hard-hitting facts. We'll give you a book anyway, so we won't, but we took the Minister of Commerce through this. So that brings you upon technology. So I mean, we can obviously have our own technology, but the fact is America, China, and the Western world has a lot of technology, and we won't touch on capital right now. So with Trump coming in and the China relations, yes, we can invent our own technology, but the world is way, way ahead of us. We need the technology. We need to, maybe import is the wrong word, but we need to have good collaborations. So thinking of Trump 2.0, thinking of China, maybe both those you could throw some light on, because that's on top of everybody's mind, and it ultimately impacts our Mittelstand.
Okay.
Call them, right? So,
Sanjay ji, see, I'm not saying we should invent every technology. I'm saying, you know, we are capable of doing some. But how did companies get to where it is? Japanese did not invent everything. They worked with the Europeans, did the collaboration, and got to where they are. Chinese got it the same from the Japanese or the Koreans. The Southeast Asia, Korea got it from Japan or from Europe. So what happens when you go up the chain? You have to collaborate. You grow by working with other countries and other companies. So I would say today, as Foreign Minister, you know, my message to you is, world is an opportunity. The more we collaborate, the more we will raise our standards. You know, there is an issue of resources, yes, like you said, but there is an issue of technology, there is an issue of best practices, there is an issue of competitiveness, and we will only know that when we work with the world. So, but I would also say one thing, and especially for MSMEs, you know, today there is one big issue in much of the world. वहाँ लोग नहीं है, आबादी कम हो रही है. This is a big issue. So we had German Chancellor just recently. Along with him, I think there were almost 600-700 German companies who came. Their biggest interest was, they have in many cases, they have the capital, they have the technology, they have even the innovation, they have the ambition. They don't have the talent. So one of the things he told us is that he's prepared to look at, you know, talent, getting more Indian talent. But I give you the reverse. Why does the talent have to go out? The business can, instead of talent going out, the business can come in. But business will come in if people feel there is a collaboration benefit by coming to India, which means we have to create a good business reputation, we have to create a good business climate, but we have to have an industry which is seen as a good partner. So, you know, I'm seeing today the global capability centers is one area, one sector which is growing very fast. But you don't have to be a very big company necessarily to have a global capability center. I can see in the coming times in many areas, many niche areas, people will want, partners in India, relationships in India. In the old days, we would say, वो हमारे market के लिए आते हैं. But I think today वो हमारे talent के लिए भी आएंगे. And Indian businesses must use it. You have to say, okay, work with me. Look, there'll be many things I can do for you, and I can work with you. And that's how we will absorb technology.
I agree with you fully, and I think that's that's fully right. We've been obviously pitching to the foreigners, make in India, for India, and for the world. So you can even manufacture here and export to the world. But then there are a whole other set of issues the folks face on ease of doing business, but that obviously your government is addressing it separately through logistics costs coming down over time with the PM Gati Shakti, power costs coming down over time. So there are a lot of other things there. But coming back on collaboration, Trump 2.0, how do you see the government to government? Because that is also important. Because I know American companies for a long time. They come for a profit pool and evidence of profit. So
expectation of profit.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, fine. Expectation of profit. And they're not that patient. So how do you see the Trump 2.0 relationship? I know it's a bit early, but I'm sure you have some views on that.
See, in my business, studying Trump is like I won't even say a hobby. It is an obsession with people. What is he saying? Every word, every sentence, every speech is analyzed, and people are making predictions. And like any business, how do you make predictions? What is the data which you already have? So we had Trump 1.0. What he did in 1.0 is some basis. But many things have changed also in 4 years. So it won't exactly be like 1.0. Now he has said some things earlier. We have to wait and see. We have to be a little bit patient. But I think the world has a general sense that these are possible things which can happen in Trump 2.0. So what are those possible things? Those possible things are, in a sense, one, a stronger commitment in America to manufacturing. Number two, a belief in America that the world, other partners have not been fair with America. So we have to change the terms of engagement or transactions. And number three, that, an America which will, continue, they are still the biggest power and they have a global presence. Nobody else is close. I think the the gap between America and China is actually very, very big in terms of global presence. But an America which says, okay, globe is very good, but, finally, what is my gain out of this relationship? In a sense, a more business-like America, which is looking at much more immediate, immediate outcomes and results. So how do you deal with such an America? One, by, messaging that, look, our interests are aligned. Anything we do, आपका भी भला होगा, मेरा भी होगा. So there is a certain, there is a deal here. There is a mutuality here. There's a benefit here to both parties. Two, to also look at where are the interests of America? Where is it that America will also need us? Now, in many areas where America will want to keep technology leads, if you look at the new emerging areas, what we call emerging and critical technologies, for example, take semiconductors. America today, there was a time when America dominated the semiconductor industry. Okay, then the industry migrated to a significant, at least manufacturing migrated outside. Today, they have tried to bring back the manufacturing, but they cannot do it all, and their efficiency and their human resources does not allow that. So you have to have some understanding saying, okay, some part of the business is here, some part of the business is there, but look, I'm a market economy, I'm a trusted partner. So we'll have to work out also a political equation with America. And that, I think, is one area where we score because, we've always had a positive political relationship with Trump. And, I would say this, Trump has always had also a positive political view of India. it will not automatically translate into every transaction. You know, like everybody else, we may also have some issues. We will deal with those issues. But I would say, when I look around the world today, you know, there are countries who actually have, you know, political, you know, they are looking at the Trump 2.0 as a political challenge. We are not. And I think that separates us from a very large number of countries. So we are in a much more advantageous position to translate 2.0 into a deeper relationship.
I think that answers the question. I think you're right. The political angle is actually important, and if that can be conveyed across, then hopefully the FDI, corporates, collaborations, joint ventures can get an uptake.
That's why I'm sitting here saying it to you. They will also hear it. You know.
Good. So, you know, but I must tell you, their governors, I was at one of your events in Germany, and their governors are flying around in private jets, and they're pitching for make in a particular state. State-wise governors, I was telling my friends last night, state-wise governors are flying around into Europe, pitching, here's land, here's power cost, which is nothing, and labor you don't need anyway. And I'm just saying we have competition on that front. So if you're right, if the political landscape can be, which I think you rightly said, we are so well positioned with them, culturally, value-wise, democracy, everything. So it should work. So I think the rest is all of us to do a good job on the balance part. So just in the same tone, comments on China, where you're politically not obviously as mutually well positioned. I don't know how to even word it. I'm not a diplomat, but how do you tackle that? Because they also have technology, they also have capital. And one more thing we heard from the CA earlier: if you want to be a supply chain, which we keep saying to anybody in the world, you have to have a connection with China, because they are the supply chain behind the supply chain for literally everything, even for critical minerals. So just maybe a comment on that.
Look, I'll make two comments. One, yes, there are global supply chains, and when one single country accounts for 33% of global manufacturing, then it is logical that many supply chains will go through that country, and it's a reality with which we will have to factor into our calculations. But it is also a fact that if you become excessively dependent on single supply chains, or you, in the name of supply chains, you open up your market so that it is no longer a supply chains, but your sectors are getting hollowed out, you have to be careful there. So nobody is saying don't do business, but we are equally saying, you know, think about it, weigh it, you know, look at the bigger term implications, especially for MSMEs. That, you know, we don't want to end up as a market of another economy and not be able to compete with their products which are, you know, dumped in our country. So we have to find the right balance here. Now, there's a second problem. The second comment is that, you know, for the last 4.5 years, our political relationship with China has not been good. It has not been good. All of you know why, because of the situation in the border. Yesterday and day before, I had made a very detailed statement in Parliament that, okay, things have improved a little bit. We have managed to make some progress out there. We have to now sit down and discuss with the Chinese what we do further. But I think we need to keep these, you know, there are no black and white answers in very sharp terms saying, I think everything needs to be balanced and weighed, and I would advocate that with China.
Okay, that's terrific. And maybe we just move to Russia for a minute, where we have a great relationship, but a one-sided import relationship. Again, I'm back to my MSMEs at the end of the food chain always. What can we do to enhance exports to them?
You know, I'm glad you asked that question, because what has happened with Russia is in the last 2 years, people generally know that we have been importing more oil from Russia. I think what people don't know so well is it's not only oil. We've also, for example, been importing other natural resources, Coking coal is a very good example. We've also been importing fertilizers in large amounts. And to my mind, actually, this is a long-term, this is a shift which I hope will be long-term because I think it's in the interest of India. Why is it in the interest of India? Given our, look at our situation today. We are today, let us say, a below $4 trillion economy, 3.5, 4, let us say, likely to grow at 7 to 8% for at least 2 to 3 decades more. What do we need? We have people. Okay. Yes, we discuss we need technology, but we also need access on a long-term sustainable basis to natural resources. So for me, the countries which are basically natural resources economies, Russia, Australia, and Indonesia, Brazil, these are our natural partners. These will be important partners in the times to come. Now, what we are getting from Russia is, this also existed before 2022. The problem before 2022 was their attention was elsewhere. They were primarily looking at the West. Now, after 2022, they are focusing much more on Asia, and we should take full benefit of that, which is what we are trying to do. But now that there is such a big, import from Russia, we are pressing Russian leadership very strongly, saying, look, we are buying so many things and we are buying it, we are good customers, we are long-term customers. So good customer, also has a right. Okay. So all of you know that in business, you have to look after your customers as well. So we also need, a better access to the Russian economy. So we are pressing them, in pharma industry, we are pressing them in marine products, we are pressing them in some of the agro products. And there are, there are SPS restrictions, there are non-tariff barriers, there are standards. They make you do things, even if you have certification somewhere else, they say, nahi, hamara nahi hai, kisi aur ka hai. These are standard tactics which everybody employs to keep the other guy out. Now, we have to find ways of, going through it, persuading them, cajoling them, and I think we will make progress. We are certainly, I just had the Russian First Deputy Prime Minister here last month. He is, a person who's in charge of the economic relationship. And we made a very, very strong pitch to him that, look, the Russian economy should open up much more to exports from India in these issues, in these areas that, as I said, pharma, agro products. A lot of the consumer industries in Russia will have a natural interest in Indian suppliers.
Yeah, I think you made a very valid point. These artificial trade barriers keep coming up with all kind of excuses. We saw that happening to some of our cough syrups and all those things. So I think just want to quickly go around the world on the same basis. I think these three were important, but maybe just touch upon Europe, besides obviously inviting them to come and make in India, FTAs, trade diplomacy with Europe. Probably easier, but not difficult, quite difficult to crack because they have a lot of trade barriers, which are not even visible. Maybe a comment on that, and then I want to just quickly move to how you see Southeast Asia and Gulf as well, because, we're really playing in the whole world. Your landscape is the whole world, and it matters for our exports and imports. And export is a big push right now.
Well, I'm sure you asked Piyushji this question, so I don't want to say...
We didn't get a chance.
Okay, because I don't want to say something which contradicts him.
No,
if I do contradict him, he's right. So let's start with that.
I can assure you we didn't get a chance to ask him, okay?
But, I would say this. Look, this government, the Modi government, we have been very cautious on FTA. And we have been very cautious on FTA for two reasons. Number one, weighing the experiences and the results of previous FTAs. And number two, our concern for the impact of FTAs on MSMEs. We will always keep MSME interests and the interests of our, of our farmers in mind when we negotiate FTAs. Now, if you look at the FTAs that we have negotiated, we have done UAE, we have done early harvest in Australia, we have done Mauritius. These are FTAs where these interests were not threatened in any manner. The FTAs were architectured in a way in which these issues were not there. Secondly, we have been pressing very strongly for a review of the ASEAN-India trade in goods, ITIGA, trade in goods agreement, because we have concerns about the impact of that FTA on the development of manufacturing in India. And we feel that that FTA should not become, in a way, damaging to the Indian economy. We believe today that the performance of that FTA and the time period which has elapsed justifies a review, and we have been pushing for that very, very strongly. Your point about EU, and I will also add, by the way, we also did an FTA with the EFTA countries. So again, there was no MSME issue, there was no agriculture concern out there. When it comes to EU and UK, I think it's complex because there are many non-trade issues also in that FTA. So those also have to be negotiated. And in the case of EU, because there are multiple members, so everybody has